Hi, Pops. Hey there. How are you doing? I would need to do this video all over again. Hold on a minute. Da, da, da. It helps to have a microphone. Hey, I'm Pops, and I want to talk to you about a movie that just wrapped up. It's another one of these Indian cinema films I've kind of been getting into lately. Um, I will tell you that I am not going to pretend to be an expert in Indian cinema. I may misspeak. I may say things that are wrong, and I do apologize. This one is called Alla Vaikunthapuramulu. All right, there you go. AVPL was the abbreviation I found somewhere, so I may have to stick to AVPL. The Vaikunthapuramulu has to do with the name of the building, this mansion that centers in the film, and I don't know why the title means something to someone. So anyway, this is a newer film. It's a 2020 film, and it is, for lack of a better term, this is one of those baby switched at birth stories where you have two kids, one wealthy family, one extremely poor family, and something happens to circumstances and they get swapped. And then you're going to fast forward to adulthood, examine their lives. Maybe one of them will rise to prominence and the other one may not, or you may see compare and contrast with their personality types and those kinds of things. So that's kind of the general essence of the story itself. It's played to be, we're going to talk about that, like what works and doesn't work. And I think maybe this is, again, cultural stuff too, where certain things may work for the target audience in India, but not for us. And anyway, so hopefully, you can give me what you think in the comments and tell me where you think I'm right and where I'm wrong. So anyway, so Ramachandra, he is a very wealthy, influential man. And then there's Valmiki, who is extremely poor. So there's not even money to tip the nurse when their wives are in birth, giving birth. And you have this compare and contrast right out of the gate. And it appears as though Ramachandra's son is passed away. The nurse is holding the baby and just stops breathing. And Valmiki sees this, and the nurse is there, and they basically come up with this scheme. Valmiki comes up with this scheme to switch the children. So his poor baby, his baby that would grow up impoverished, will have a chance at this wealthy, lavish life. It's fine, and then there's like a struggle about it because the nurse is not going for that. Her name is Shana. I may have her name wrong. Anyway, so the struggle continues, and then the baby starts crying. The babies live. So now the nurse is having a panic attack and wants to put the babies back, but Valmiki's like, no, we're not doing that. And she gets pushed over this ledge in this building. So she falls basically a story, and she's bleeding, but she doesn't die. She's in a coma, and we'll find out about that. So then you have sort of a compare and contrast with how they're raised. And there is a great aerial photo there of them getting in their cars and leaving before we get to that. And they go their separate ways. I thought that shot was really good, by the way. So you have two different kids. Raj grew up with the wealthy family, the Ramachandra family. He's kind of shy and soft-spoken. And then Bantu, he believes in telling the truth at all costs. He appears to be very outspoken and clever. And Valmiki treats him very, very badly. Somehow Valmiki works for or with the Ramachandra family, and that relationship continues. And there's some sort of weird thing with Bantu's name, by the way, Bantu, and that is like, is it a slur? Because it's treated like it's a slur, but then it's never brought up again. So there's like a lot of time spent on that. It's kind of weird. Anyway, Valmiki is helping Raj. There's a quick shot with their children with a test score, and he did. I mean, if he actually got a 9, which I think is silly that someone would get a 9, and then Valmiki changed it to a 97, where Bantu scored an actual 98. So there's kind of this thing, and basically that's the general backstory of the film before it jumps ahead 20 years. And basically you have this whole thing with Valmiki. He basically treats him really, really bad. Bantu is, the star of the film, played by Ara. I got to get it right. Allu Arjun. Um, I don't know much about the cast. I'm learning. I can tell you that it's played very tongue in cheek at times. And you have this constant compare and contrast, especially when they're thrust back into each other's worlds. So, like Raj, he's quit the MBA program again. He's kind of lazy, not really interested in making much of himself. It appears like he's in this wealthy family, and then meanwhile, Bantu uh, living in the ghetto basically. And it's like it was interesting to see if we're doing comedy or not, because he is getting this scarf back. There's like this group that drives by the sister and takes her scarf, and there's like this fight scene, and Allu Arjun is like, he's fixing his hair, and it's like, I was like, is it comedy or action or what? I the tone of all of this was very strange for me, because it wasn't even, but it wasn't bad. And then anyway, so Valmiki and Bantu are constantly at odds, and one of the things that is over that is the fact that Bantu is constantly telling the truth, and Valmiki is such a horrible human. He'll say things like, "Well, how do you deal with life if you can't lie?" And he's like, "Well, I won't be afraid to tell the truth, but if I lie, I'll be afraid all the time." And I'm like, that's really, really heavy. And I'm finding that in a lot of these Indian cinema films, that even when there's silliness or goofiness, there's these great morals and life lessons that are kind of interwoven in there. And that has definitely been lost through a lot of American cinema. Like, they think they're being smart or wise, and they're not at all. So then there's dance sequences, and about his dad not listening to him, and you end up with this interview situation. And the interview was interesting because it's done a lot through like flashback of him telling the story to make himself look good. But it's just a little hard to try to get the relationship dynamics of like human resources and the interviewee. And then of course the one guy that he had gotten into a fight with during the earlier scene over the scarf is actually a person that he has to interact with here. And then when Bantu ends up in the elevator, he can't stop staring at this lady's legs because she's super hot. And she says his horrible name is cute. Again, the horrible name thing doesn't come up again, but it's played here. Anyway, so he does this really clever sequence about getting empathy and the sadness of the father thing. Again, it's a little hard for us to relate to this gag because we wouldn't have this type of interaction in job interviews here, but it plays okay. He ends up having to work for the hot girl, of course, and then she sends him like to these really crazy places. Like, he ends up in like a desert place, but it's so hot there. It's like the couple that he's with, they're on this romantic getaway because I guess it's like a travel agency company, and they're to the point where the stakes in the tent are coming up. You get what I'm playing for the gag, and then he ends up in ice, like in the snow covered place. They're kind of almost mocking him because they think he's dancing, but he's actually like shivering and begging and stuff. So anyway, we kind of cut back to the main story with that little side jaunt. And some of this is part of the reason with these films are a little longer than we would normally have in our films, is a lot of screen time is spent on, the original baby swap, some of the backstory, the interview stuff, the scarf stuff, all that. So for us, a lot of that would be shorter. So it's a little bit faster pace to get to the main story, because the main story is the juxtaposition of the two characters, and then once they're thrust back together. Anyway, Valmiki is just an awful human. He runs across the nurse who's still in a coma. Oh, sorry, not he doesn't runs across. He visits her every day and has been. I think he brings her apples or something, and it's like she basically should just die in peace. Is his philosophy, because he wants all of this to be behind him. He's living in fear, just like Bantu had just said, because he's lied. He's living this lie this whole time. So, anyway, Bantu is basically being lectured by Amu, who's kind of boxing, by the way. Like, that was a really cheesy scene. Like, why is she not just doing something else? Like, I think maybe that's a thing there where the ladies are boxing, but it's like here we would have her doing some other type of exercise that would have been a little easier. But he's just distracted, and he sings some song. I had to write it down. My eyes are hooked on your legs. I don't know if that's a very good translation or not, but it made me laugh because it would just not fly in America. I love it because the Hollywood people are just so full of themselves about not being able to take a joke. Anyway, so there's another abrupt scene, another fight scene over them with Bantu and Allu trying to basically buy out the company, and she doesn't want to, and he kind of like takes over the scene, and it becomes like a physical thing, like it becomes like an assault scene. And I'm like, what is happening in this film? It's like I can't quite get the tone of what they're going for with these scenes. Like we suddenly have fight scenes. Like it worked in the Bahubali or an RRR or something like that because it makes the whole tenor of the film is centered around like war and conflict. Whereas we're like these people hanging out in an office building. Next thing you know, he's pummeling people and fixing his hair and I don't know. Anyway, there's a big mix up with Ramachandra and Raj and trying to hook everybody up and who's going to be promised to who. And Amu's basically now promised to Raj. Bantu loves her. She loves him. So now it's kind of a big mess. And anyway, so they end up in like a police station. And suddenly the police officers are giving Bantu advice as well. And there's more music. And he has to do this comedy because Bantu is so good looking that they can't believe that he got into that fight earlier. Like, so I will say at least they fixed the police assault question that I had, and now I'm like, okay, but they don't even believe him. Like he's so good looking, he's such a model, he's so effeminate in his personality. They don't believe him. I guess it's the gag that they're going for, and I thought it was fine. We're gonna come back to that. So Bantu can't stop telling the truth, and it almost like gets him arrested. Like he almost is going to be arrested if he doesn't stop talking. And I have to say that there's a shot of Bantu and Amu where they're having a song and they're having a moment, montage, them spending time together. It's kind of like a music video. It's okay. It happens some. Then we get to Ramachandra, who's basically in conflict with basically like, I'm going to call him evil boss. His name, I wrote his name down somewhere in my notes, but it doesn't matter. He's just bad guy. And there's literally like a mafioso type of situation here over here it is. Appala Naidu is his name. So Naidu basically has this attack on Ramachandra because of business dealings and trying to get more control. And he feels like he has control of, like, say, shipping and ports, so therefore they need him. So it's definitely a typical mafioso type of hit. Comes in and stabs him, and then they rig up the building so that they can't get him to the hospital. They chain the stairs, they rig up the elevator, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so long story short, Bantu saves Ramachandra, gets him to the hospital. He uses like the scaffolding thing on the side of the building that the window washers use, gets him outside. And then there's the conflict at the hospital with this nurse, because this nurse there sees Bantu. I don't know how she'd recognize him if she hasn't been seeing him. She's been in a coma, but she recognizes him. I don't know. And Valmiki's freaking out. Anyway, long story short, she tells Bantu the truth. And Valmiki won't come clean at first. There's a whole thing about being free and knowing the truth. And that, Valmiki's mom, Valmiki's wife, who is what Bantu thought was his mom, is now his surrogate mom, is very, very ill. So Bantu agrees to just keep it to himself because he's going to hurt everybody. But he and Valmiki now at least understand one another. And then as Bantu is around this Ramachandra family because he rescued them, they bring him around more often, and he's seeing his mom and dad for real for the first time. Like he's really seeing how they interact and all of that. And then ARK, the grandpa, I don't quite understand some of the characters with their names and stuff because it's not always clear. There's not like even introductions in scenes sometimes. So anyway, there's like a brother-in-law who's stealing money, which, would be his uncle, these kinds of things. So there's some jokes about a doctor, about trying I don't quite understand some of the stuff. Like Ramachandra's there. There's this doctor, and it's kind of and Valmiki's being a jerk about, oh, Bantu, he's completely useless. Every fool has his day. Yeah, he saved you, but he's no one to be kept around. Well, come to find out, Bantu had kidnapped the doctor's son, was blackmailing him for the doctor to help get him to be there. I mean, I think they're going for gags. Anyway, so this is where so the problem they have now is they're playing up, they do these things and they kind of move the story along very well, and then they stop, and it has to be a moment that we showcase Allu Arjun in real life. Like it's a slow motion music video where he's coming in the room, and it's like, I'm like, okay, are we having a movie? Are we doing like an advertisement? Are we doing what are we doing? And it was like, I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, I was reminded, so that there's this thing where Bantu is going to intercede and he's going to go visit the mafia guys, and the one guy pushes the grandpa. That's Ark. And it's like this slow motion. Bantu's just thrashing. We have no idea how he has any of these skills or talents. He is like, it's not as though he was a former Navy SEAL. Well, I don't know what you guys have over there. It would be like for us if we had like a Navy SEAL or a CIA Black Ops or some sort of, super spy type thing, and it's in slow motion. And all I can think about was, there's a new Jumanji film, and Karen Gillan is dance fighting. They play music, and she's just dancing and fighting and kicking people around that she shouldn't be able to do because she's basically almost like superhuman. And I feel like Allu Arjun convinced them that that's the whole point of this movie, is to make him look cool, make him do dance fighting, beat up people he shouldn't be allowed to beat up, and look super cool doing it. I will say there's like a Rolls Royce joke about because he sees a Rolls Royce and it has RR on it, and he says it sounds like Rajamouli, like a Rajamouli film title, and I'm like, what the heck? I was blown away. I'm like, wait a minute, RR, but this movie came out before RR, so I was like, what is happening? I was in like this crazy surreal moment in this film. It was so, I don't know, great, because I don't even know any of this was intent. I don't. Anyway, so the evil boss, and it's weird because the evil boss is played up with like this like tick thing, this thing he keeps doing, and I'm like, I don't. It was fine, I guess. I mean, that was that. Yeah, okay. I don't know. Bantu mocks him over it at one point, so that was funny in a way. Anyway, so there's more conflict. The police commissioner shows up. Bantu tells the police guy about the baby switch, and there's more mocking of Valmiki and this whole dynamic of the relationship and Raj and all of that. And I felt like, why are we recapping all of this? Like, I feel like they did this as though someone left the theater and they came back and they need to be caught up again. Like, all of this was unnecessary. We like duplicated all of this other than having a few new Valmiki jokes. It's like, we have plenty of time for that because that never stops. So, anyway, so the police commissioner, the way you guys play police is a little weird because it's very strange because they're trying to be involved. Sometimes they're offering advice, but then they're also weird and goofy, like offering like, we assume rich people are intelligent, but they're just lucky. And I'm like, why would the police commissioner say that? That's a weird line to just drop in the middle. So anyway, all of this film at this point sets up this fact that Bantu is always like speaking truth, but suddenly it turns into the truth hurts. It can be devastating, but it forces us to face our mistakes. And I'm like, wow. And then it creates this thing where he's basically calling out the fact that Ramachandra and Yusa, which is his actual parents, his mom and dad, and it forces them to come to grips with their marital problems because he's been observing these details of how bad their marriage has been. He knows like, oh, it's been like this reference was like 7 years and you close the door and you do this. So, and obviously Ramachandra had an affair and this is what happened. But he never actually said sorry. And this scene does really well because it forces that. It forces you to face the worst demons and truths and issues that you have. And I thought this was real, again, Indian cinema, is nailing it when it comes to these sort of like high level, like archetypes and life lessons and wisdom. And this was really, really good. And the problem is all wrapped up in all of this goofiness. So, okay. So, all right. So he's become like this weird Gary Sue where nothing can hurt him. He can fight like a superhero. He's super smart and says truth and wisdom. And he's basically manipulating the circumstances around the family so that everybody knows the uncle's cheating, stealing money. There's this scene where I guess they're in a lobby and he has a red jacket. I don't know how this poor guy got all these cool clothes, by the way, but he puts on this red jacket and she tells the lady in the lobby to like zip it up or something. And he turns around, he's zipping his pants. And I was like, he's real arrogant and full of himself now. Like he moves along of I don't really need the wealthy people. I can do my own thing, wisdom, truth, whatever, to now I can be a jackwagon. And then the song is about being a savior. And I'm like, he's like convincing Amu to stay in the room and they're working out this deal and all this lip syncing's happening. And then it's like fourth wall. It's like becomes very meta where he's like, did I forget the dialogue? And I will say this, at least Raj becomes more interesting. Raj was interesting and good in this part. And it kind of become a shift for Raj. Arc throws a party. It sets up some more stuff that's fun, like old musical stuff. And Valmiki basically just betrays Bantu and lists off all these terrible things he's been doing as far as kidnapping the doctor's kid and saw him with Amu because obviously they're in love. So there's a slap that's involved. And anyway, it gets him kicked out before the big boss does his thing. So the big boss shows up, or maybe it's off screen. Anyway, there was some good dialogue with this kidnapping because it's like the big boss is like, I have the niece. If you call the police, it'll be a murder. You cooperate, it'll just be kidnapping. That was like really, really brilliant. I don't know how that translates, but that's how we got it, and that's brilliant, by the way. Anyway, so long story short is, Rama's ready to help because it's like a daughter. There's a montage of Bantu going there and thrashing them, and he's like, the tiger has arrived, and he's carrying the rooster. Like you can see the thumb in the thumbnail. It's like he's carrying a rooster at one point. It's like the film is so uneven is the problem. The film is funny. The film has some smart stuff. But to me, the film is entirely in existence just to make him look cool and be cool. I don't know if he's mostly, from the impression, he's mostly like a model and singer and stuff in real life. And what comes across on screen, most part. So anyway, the grandfather comes clean that he overheard the nurse. So he knew all along. He knows that Bantu is actually the son. And, parents just want their kids to be happy, but what can't the kids want their parents to be happy? And it just makes everything deep and heavy because no one's really wanting to hurt other people. And even Valmiki, who's basically like this worst human imaginable, he's just not a good person, even though he was trying to do something good. So anyway, it basically takes the entire premise of the baby switch and it creates a reason for them to switch it back. So the mom basically says, Raj, you're going to go live with them, and Bantu, you're going to live with us. And it basically gives everyone the lives that they could have had. And you can see then, like, okay, yeah, because the police commissioner comes back. I had to check my notes, and yeah, the police commissioner comes back again because the bad guys were stabbed and whatever, and he doesn't believe Bantu, and it's played for laughs as, Raj is kind of like this lazy slacker, doesn't really want to do a whole lot, and Bantu gets on the helicopter because he's super cool, and anyway, so it's all right. So AVPL, what I think. So it's fun. I will say culturally, a lot of stuff doesn't translate for us. And this is really one of those where I really don't understand why we have 3 or 4 dance fighting sequences where he's able to do these amazing things for no reason. We don't know why. We don't know how. He doesn't get really hurt at all. He's like super cool clothes, super cool things for a guy that lives basically like dirt poor. Um, I'm okay with some of the songs and some of the things that you have in this and other films, but this is one where it's like we're going along and then suddenly you have these crazy things. It's like him talking about does he know the dialogue or not, and um, just a lot of that doesn't work. So this is kind of I would say of the few that I have done, this one is the one I've enjoyed the least, or I would say I would be less likely to watch it again. I think the acting is fine for what it is. I will say there's good moments for the different cast. There's also not a lot for certain characters to do. And I will say who plays the girlfriend Amu. She is Pooja Hegde. I would assume how you say her name. If I'm wrong, I apologize to Miss. Let's see. Did I get that right? I don't know. Our translation on trying to teach us how to say things properly, by the way, is just really not helpful at all. It looks like it's Puduja Hajdi. I think I got it right. Anyway, she is a beautiful lady, and she comes across as just being very beautiful, but also classy, which is something that we don't get a lot in American cinema. American cinema thinks that being beautiful involves just showing skin all the time or kind of coming across as, for lack of a better term, kind of trampy. And she doesn't come across that way. And kudos to her. And I don't think Allu Arjun plays it that way. But there are scenes where he does. There are scenes where he plays kind of like arrogant, suave, nothing can get me down. I'm super cool and I'm whatever. And I'm like, you're better if you don't say all of that. Like the writer would have gotten a better result if they just not played up that part of it. His character would have just been this way. We don't know why he's this way. He's able to do these things. I will say it would have been better if he actually got hurt every now and again, because it would have been at least believable. So, all right, that's my effort to try to discuss this film. A huge breakdown. AVPL. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you'd like me to watch. You have to spell things correctly, and I will admit I'm having trouble finding things that have English subtitles to review things, and I do apologize if I've offended anyone. Obviously, this is coming from a movie critic, a movie reviewer from here who's new to Indian cinema. I only had seen a few Bollywood films way back before I saw some of the newer stuff. So I apologize for some of the stuff. Hopefully I've explained not just how I reacted, but why I reacted. And I love to have that interaction with you guys in the comments. So thanks for everything. I appreciate all of the crazy support to this point, because I definitely have been enjoying it and learned a lot.
Rap Circle is finally here. I know everybody been waiting for it, right?